Working in the cleanups and things like that, we would be out there, and then there was a lot of people wearing their Trump memorabilia. They got the MAGA hats and everything, and some people were saying, "Oh, I can't believe you support Trump."
Hello, I'm Bonnie Bay. Welcome to the Contrary. This week, we continue our Woman Thought Leader series with Kim Klacik, a Republican commentator. She came to prominence after a video she posted of rats in Baltimore was highlighted by President Trump. She's now one of the president's most influential Black female supporters on social media and cable. So welcome to you, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
And you obviously have a very bright political future.
I hope so.
And you announced this past week that you're going to be turning your start on social media with the rats and the president into a political career for yourself. So why don't you tell the audience about it?
Yep. So I kind of got involved in politics back in 2014. I was actually a volunteer on Capitol Hill, and I volunteered with the architect of the Capitol. So we ran around basically helping with tours and helping with members of Congress getting to their meetings, which they still get lost. I don't know how, but they do.
It's a pretty weird campus up there. I mean, confusing.
Yeah. Yes, it is. So I would help with that. But then I would go in and sit on some of the hearings and just listen and kind of just hear about what's going on. And so I ended up joining a group called Politics, and I started writing for their blog. So I've been, very lucky in, I guess, how I fell into it. But I continued. I kept going. Back in 2008, I actually voted for President Obama. I was a Democrat for sure. And then when 2012 came around, I started questioning, what was really going on. And I thought, you know what, maybe, just maybe, I'm not a Democrat. And so I started reading more about conservative values. And after a while, I decided, you know what, maybe I am a conservative. But I actually didn't vote in 2012. I wasn't very happy with Mitt Romney also. So I actually saved my vote, and I did vote local elections, but not presidential. And then moving forward, I ended up voting for President Trump in 2016.
And are you happy with that vote?
I am happy, yes.
Are you a women's rights advocate?
I am, I guess you could say. I love my rights, I'm a woman. I guess I don't always look at things as maybe everyone else, like, gender or color. I kind of look at it as we're all on the same team, we're all Americans. I don't view it as, women's or Latinas or whatever. We should all be kind of just in the same group.
Well, I ask that question because I always wonder how women who call themselves women's rights advocates, and many of his female supporters do, feel about what he's been charged with, raping women, attacking women, bragging on radio with Howard Stern that when you grab women by the genitals, they really like it. How when you hear that and he's running for office and you're for him, what does that make you think?
I can see how people are concerned about it, for sure. It's definitely not what you want to hear. It's not what, and I have a daughter, definitely not what you want your daughter to hear. But I guess at the same time, I kind of look at it as 22 women came forward. And I don't know if some of them are still in the process, but he is yet to be convicted, So it's kind of like, is he really guilty? I'm not sure. I'm the kind of person that always waits it out. And then on that topic, I am kind of wondering, I know you probably heard of this slush fund book, and $17 million has been paid out to people that filed harassment claims on Capitol Hill. I learned about that while volunteering on Capitol Hill. There's a secret slush fund and the Treasury Department. And I thought, well, the public isn't made aware of that. We are made aware of everything that President Trump has done. But the public still doesn't know even what their members have done. You
are running for the seat vacated by the passing of Elijah Cummings, who was a civil rights icon, really. And Maryland is a blue state, and there were elections last week in several states, including Virginia, which went to an all-Democratic, switched to an all-Democratic controlled government for the first time in 26 years. What does that say about you running as a Republican in Maryland?
Yeah, definitely. It's an uphill battle for sure. First, just going back a little bit, I know a lot of people say Congressman Cummings, and he was a great guy, and everybody truly loved him. But as far as civil rights, I think sometimes people get a little confused because he was a child at that time. He used to talk about how he used to listen to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the radio while he was at school or when he got out of school. But as far as running in Maryland and what happened last week in Virginia, I mean, that was insane. And I know I got a lot of backlash because I said something on Twitter. But I know, like many people know, that the GOP and the RNC, is whatever you want to call them, they're not doing a whole lot as far as voter outreach. And they could be doing a lot more. And they always tote these numbers. We're raising millions of dollars thanks to President Trump. Well, where is that money being spent? Because obviously it's not being spent on the grassroots effort. So yes, I am very concerned about that. And I know I'm gonna have to knock on every single door myself. I'm gonna have to go and shake every single hand. And it's a special election, so it's very short. You know, my primary is February 4th. General is, if hopefully I make it, to April 28th. And it's short. And so it's condensed and I gotta work hard, but I'm up for the challenge.
What happens when you talk to African Americans and tell them you're a Republican and you're a Trump supporter? Do they look at you sideways, or do they have strange? But 90% of African American women voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Let's remember.
Definitely. So even working in the cleanups and things like that, you know, we would be out there and then there was a lot of people wearing their Trump memorabilia. You know, they got the MAGA hats and everything. And, you know, some people were saying, oh, I can't believe you support Trump, you know, and I was like, well, we got to look at it like this. You know, there's a lot of this trash and a lot of this has been sitting here for almost a year. If it wasn't for Trump, we wouldn't be out here removing it. The city now, with the Baltimore Department of Public Works, they wouldn't be taking a look at it. So we can hate Trump all day, but the fact that he actually brought light to the situation is a reason it's being removed. And some people will then look at me and say, okay, you're right about that. And then we just move forward.
But we have to do a couple of steps walking backward first, which is that you took a video and posted it on social media of rats in the trash in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And that went viral. And eventually the president supported you, came out and named you and supported you. Are you sure the city wouldn't be picking up trash if it weren't for President Trump saying something about it? I mean, these are things cities routinely do.
Right, yes. So unfortunately, not in every neighborhood. And so that's the part about Baltimore. There's a tale of two Baltimores. So not all neighborhoods are treated equally. So you've got East and West Baltimore, and you got some parts of South Baltimore. You got Federal Hill, which is treated great. Port Covington, which is up and coming. Harbor East, they've got a ton of resources. And you'll never see trash or rats in these areas. But in parts of East Baltimore and West Baltimore, and even South Baltimore and Cherry Hill, you will see illegal dumping and a lot of vacant houses and trash everywhere. And so just, I would say probably a month ago, City Hall had a meeting with those that are connected to the 311 service. That's what people call to have trash and things removed. And they had a meeting and I went to sit in on it. You know, I didn't have to talk. I just wanted to hear what was going on. And then they all realized, you know, we've never been in a room together before. We've never talked about why we have so many issues getting this done. You know, they even talked about how the fact that they only had 5 vendors, I guess, going around to cut grass and city-owned properties, and that's why there was such a backlog. So they're just now finding out all these inefficiencies within this department, or many departments connected to the 311 services. And again, you know, that meeting wasn't on the books until after the rats and trash videos.
But hasn't there been some publicity around the fact that Baltimore is losing population? It's a dwindling in terms of people and in terms of financial support, tax base.
Yeah.
It's losing people, and President Trump is not out there supporting urban renewal that I know of. If anything, he's cutting back federal housing grants and things like that. And there are people who say that Baltimore, because of the dwindling tax base, can't possibly fix itself without federal support. What are your thoughts on that issue?
Well, we could definitely use more federal support, but this is like placing the blame other than on themselves. Baltimore City is very anti-business. They've always been. Right now, they're voting on a plastic bag ban, and with that ban, they're actually going to have paper bags, where that's going to come to a tax to the consumer and to the actual stores
That's
or
going
whatever.
to come
Oh,
to a
yeah,
tax
so-
to the consumer?
so-
I mean, like DC already does?
Correct.
They charge you 5 cents
Right,
for a
5
plastic
cents.
bag, but a paper bag, there's no charge?
No. So they're going to do 5 cents for a paper bag, and plastic bags will not be available because they believe that plastic is polluting the streets. So they want to take care of that.
Are they wrong about that?
Well, I've been out there with the trash. I didn't see a ton of plastic bags, I have to tell you. I saw more mattresses and drywall and furnishings. I didn't see a ton of plastic bags, but I haven't been on every street. So I can't say, that they are not there. But they even banned styrofoam. And there was a lot of pushback from, mom and pop shops that basically, their to-go containers were styrofoam and they are cheaper for them and they're able to do and use those. They banned those. So that was another hit, against the small business. And so they are anti-business. And so they have to understand that. I know they love to, I call it grandstanding. They kind of want to get on the trends that are going across the nation. But unfortunately, when it comes to Baltimore City and our low population and the crime and the violence and the homelessness, you got to do a carve out when it comes to some of these things that they want to be on top of. And I get it. It sounds great to want to be for pollution or against pollution and for climate change and all this. It sounds lovely. And I wish we were at that level, but we just aren't.
Most millennials, and I presume you're a millennial or
thanks.
Gen or Gen X, but most millennials see climate change. I mean, this is where the president is losing young people like crazy because they feel that those things are necessary, that there won't be sustained human life on Earth without making major changes to the way we live. Why do you oppose your generation on this issue?
I don't oppose them. I guess I just don't see it as a priority above other things at this point. I mean, our homeless population in Baltimore City, like you said, the population itself dwindling, but our homeless population is out of control. And so, sure, we could have clean air, I guess, if you're living on the streets, that's great. But, we have to deal with the fact that everything that we're doing right now isn't working. Our education system, I hear Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren talking about free college. I mean, free college, you got to get in first. We've got kids that can't even graduate high school. We've got kids that, can't pass, basic math and reading courses. So it's like, they're really going to be left behind because a lot of employers are going to say, well, where's your free college? It's free. Why is it on your resume? But you got to get in. So before we can take that step, I think we have to make sure that all the children are educated enough to be able to get into that free college because it is a privilege.
But so you're blaming it on the schools, not on the parents?
No, not at all. Trust me, I used to do home visits. I was a vendor for Baltimore City Schools. Trust me, I know there's a lot of problems at home as well. But it's home.
I mean, yeah, how can you expect a child whose mother is a prostitute and is addicted to crack or heroin or opioids, whatever it is, and doesn't even feed the kid breakfast to do well in first grade?
Yeah, no, that's a tough issue. It is. And I know we have right now, there's so many methadone clinics in West Baltimore, you would think it would be handling some of this, but that's another thing. We would have to take a look at and see if these methadone clinics are actually working and what's going on. But it is a problem. It's a major problem. I know somebody, Dr. Thompson, back in Dr. Thornton, he used to be the CEO of the public schools. I think he proposed doing boarding school for some kids that maybe had a tough home life. They said no, they're not interested. But the amount of money that they're spending per pupil, they could actually afford that, and so I understand there's a lot of obstacles. There is, it's like, it's not just the parents, and I'm not even blaming the teachers. There are just so many obstacles that it's tough, but there are other cities like DC that do well, and I know it's possible.
So describe to me how it felt to become sort of social media famous because of President Trump. Tell me about how that went for you.
It was interesting, for sure. I lost a lot of people I thought were my friends. At this time I was already doing media. And so, I guess when you're in that media business, everybody wants, the hit story. Everybody wants to go viral. And so it was tough because I had actually had someone I considered a close friend. They saw the videos and they saw Trump tweeting it, and he said, you know, your videos aren't comprehensive enough. And then a week later, I realized he had a Baltimore video coming out, but it was about the vacancies in the homes, and it didn't really do any views because, you know, the rats and trash had taken over. So I understood maybe why he wasn't so happy about it. But yeah, I learned, I guess, very quickly how cutthroat the media business can be. And, you know, my mom was a little worried for my safety. She was like, oh no, you know, she's a hardcore Democrat. She's like, yeah, no, people are going to know that I'm your mom and that you support Trump and they're going to get me at work. And I'm like, Mom, that's not going to happen, you know. So she was fine. You know, I said, it's a news cycle, right? It goes on. It might last for 3 days and then it's over. So. Yeah,
but
okay.
You're talking about all negatives. Were there positives to it?
It was tough because, you know, it was a weird feeling. There were the local media stations were like, how dare you? You know, all this hashtag We Are Baltimore started. How dare you, you know, show the trash and the rats? We're more than that. And I say, you know, for you to basically say this isn't happening or this isn't in certain neighborhoods, you know, you're basically just kind of saying, okay, swipe that under the rug. You're not doing them any favors, you know, that's not helping them in any way. But then when I would go back to the neighborhoods that I was in, that I shot the videos, they were like, Kim, you won't believe it. People were coming to pick it up. We're so happy, you know, they were so excited. And so that's when I started talking to people one-on-one, and they're like, you know what, if this is what Trump does, I might just vote for Trump.
But what did he, I mean, did he change any policies? Did he give the money? I'm just thinking, you know, this was a one-off deal. Is this going to mean that all the poor neighborhoods in Baltimore, and we know climate change, a lot of those things, environmental issues affect poor neighborhoods more because they don't have the resources to hire enough garbage collectors because they don't have whatever it is, enough money to get the corporations dumping toxic waste to do it somewhere else, like the rich neighborhoods have. So, I mean, are they maybe giving him too much credit? Does this mean forever he's fixed that problem?
No, but I think people now know in those neighborhoods that they don't have to accept it. The fact that they got on it and cleaned it up, you know, almost immediately, they then realize, wow, so somebody actually can come get this when we ask someone to. You know, I like to remind people, you know,
Weren't they already asking?
Oh, yeah. So there was a backlog. That's why they did the 311 services meeting. Mm-hmm. And so 311 basically said, well, we need more money. We don't have enough people that can actually go into these certain neighborhoods to clean, you know. And so then they asked them, well, how come Harbor East and everything else is clean? And they're like, well, we have people that actually are okay with going in those neighborhoods to clean. So they kind of made it more of like, oh, it's so violent, they don't want to be there. But, you know, I guess some people have to understand there really is a tale of two Baltimores. And I'm not the first person to point this out. I'm not going to be probably the last. But the fact that you can go, you know, 5 blocks over and feel like you're in a total different world. After the 2015 riots, when Freddie Gray, and I say killed, because he definitely didn't die on his own in the back of that paddy wagon. But after that, you know, we had the riots and the looters. And unfortunately, even when Bernie Sanders came to town, he said, wow, it looks like a third world country over here. That's the neighborhood I was in with the rats and trash. Now, I was there for 2 weeks and I had to go to the hospital. I got bit by rat mites. I didn't know rats had mites. Apparently, they actually carry mites on them. And I didn't actually go and touch a rat, you know what I mean?
Right, it was just the garbage that you were
Exactly,
handling.
And I was in the abandoned homes, so that there were mites all around. But, you know, these are people that are dealing with this all the time, and it's tough, and I think they need someone to come and help them. And President Trump pointed out all the money that was sent to Baltimore in the past 4 years, and no one seems to have an accounting for that. So there's probably a good audit that needs to be done as well.
Interesting. Now, do you think this Republican Party, or how do you think this Republican Party is going to do in the presidential election in 2020?
It's tough to say. You know, I look at the margins and I say, okay, gosh, you know, especially in Virginia, Trump, he won in some of those counties that lost last week fairly well, even up by 20. And so the fact that, we had a Democrat take over in those areas, which the incumbent was Republican forever, that's a little frustrating. And I hope the GOP, the RNC really take a look at this and say, okay, we got to get some boots on the ground. Because otherwise, it'll be sketchy. And I think President Trump is doing a good job. His rallies are all very entertaining. There's always lots of people there. But he's just one person, and that's why, you have a team.
Do you ever wish that there were a third party? I'm asking that because it's one thing to go from being a Democrat to being maybe an independent or even a liberal Republican who don't exist anymore, really, but used to be a vibrant part of the party, maybe trying to build that up again, to being a Trumper.
I guess I look at it as Trump isn't really a Republican. Because he was a Democrat. I look at him more as an independent. A lot of people, I think, remember when he first got in office, everyone was like, oh no, he's going to deport everyone. We got to protect the DACA people, He hasn't done anything on that front. I don't think he ever really wanted to. My father used to say that I am socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And I believe that. I have a nonprofit that I've been doing workforce development for 7 years in Baltimore, in some parts of West Baltimore, and I do help people. I'm not one of those extremists who are like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's like sometimes you need a little help. And I've had help in my past, and so I can't imagine turning my back on anyone. But at the same time, it's like we can't just keep handing them things and thinking that they're going to eventually do for themselves. So I like to basically bridge that gap and say, okay, you might be dependent on the government now, but what steps can we take to go to financial independence? Let's work on it. Let's figure this out.
You mentioned immigration, that he's done nothing about it. Actually, I'm in touch with a lot of pro and anti-immigration groups, and they would dispute you on that point. He is, because of making Mexico be more vigilant about not letting South American and Central American people who are on their way up to illegally immigrate into the United States go through their southern border. He's actually cut way back on the number of illegal entries to the United States. But aside from that, give me an issue where he's liberal politically.
I think a lot of people thought he was anti-gay or anti-LGBTQ community. I don't see that in him. I don't see him ever, he tweets a lot, let's be honest. I don't see him ever tweeting anything anti-gay or anything like that.
Have you seen him tweet anything pro-LGBTQ?
I guess he kind of strikes me as a guy that probably doesn't even pay attention to it. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he does. Does that
describe a liberal to you?
Does that describe a liberal? I don't think he's liberal. I think liberals do pay attention to, the gender and identity politics side. But if he's anything like me, it's not anything that I wouldn't discriminate someone in that lifestyle. And I honestly don't think we should be involved in anyone's love life. I'm for smaller government. So I think sometimes, especially right now, people are a little confused on what are conservative values versus what are not. So.
And what about other issues where you would say that he's not liberal on women's issues for sure. He's appointed Supreme Court justices who are extremely conservative, very pro-corporate, very anti-small business, etc. He's a populist in that way. But give me some. He's certainly not progressive at all on environmental issues. He's totally the other end.
Yeah, I always looked at it, and I know this might sound crazy, I always looked at it as personality types too. Some people, I think personality type, they're thinking about, the environment all the time. They're thinking about, we see this back in history. They called them hippies, I guess, right? The tree huggers and all that. It's like, I think sometimes if your personality doesn't kind of fit with that, it just doesn't. Like me, I'm always thinking business, right? And sure, somebody might say, well, well, that's not very socially liberal of you. And it's like, well, no, in a way it is. Because when I go and speak to students at the Baltimore City Public Schools and I tell them this is a way for you to be pro-business, you can be an entrepreneur, you can do this, then they say, oh, wow, we can do this, we can do that. Think about social media, people that are, springing businesses on social media today, and it's like, that's what I bring to the table. And an environmentalist, they can bring that to the table. And I wouldn't shoo them away, I would listen.
Well, thank you. Very interesting opinions, very interesting take. Really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim Klacik, and best of luck to you in your future endeavors.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So that's it for this edition of To the Contrary. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/To the Contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the Cornell Douglas Foundation, committed to encouraging stewardship of the environment, land conservation, watershed protection, and eliminating harmful chemicals. Additional funding provided by the Wallace Genetic Foundation, the Colcom Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation. For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/To the Contrary.
Be more PBS.